Christy O'Connor, a hugely disappointing Saturday evening for Galway at Croke Park against Kilkenny in the Leinster Senior Hurling Final.
Yeah, very disappointing, Cian. Like, poor game for a start. Never caught fire. Atmosphere was really poor up there. Galway just never, like, they had early goal chances which they needed to take, and just to give them that platform and that, I suppose, energy, and they just didn't need to be chasing that game. Now I know that they played against the Breeze in the first half, only 2 points down at half time, like, but just never got a grip of the game. Never really had grip around the middle. And then I suppose when it came back to, when it came down to it, poor decision making, poor execution, poor finishing. Like 47% conversion rate. Like Kilkenny's was 57%, and it was still more than enough. Like Kilkenny got, you couldn't say it was a brilliant performance by Kilkenny either. Like they got 1 point from play until they got 3 points in play in the second half. 2 of them were like effectively in injury time, so you couldn't say it was a superb Kilkenny performance. But probably Galway just fell into that trap of trying to take on Kilkenny in a war and a battle, and we've all seen it for long enough now, Cian, that there's only going to be one winner in those games. But it was a very poor performance. Like, I think the refereeing didn't help matters. Very stop-start, especially when you compare it to the game in Thurles on Sunday. But look, at Galway would be disgusted really with the nature of the display, because just nowhere near good enough, nowhere near capable or good, or nowhere near reflective of what's in that team. We've said it here, Cian. I don't think you can say Galway are series, like, they're not on the same level as Limerick or even Clare, you have to say. Still think if they can get a few things right that they're not a million miles off it. But we just felt that a Leinster Titan would have been a massive boost for that team. And now they're starting back to in the quarterfinal, and I suppose not really knowing where they are again. Like,
as you said there, Christy, Kilkenny in a battle, it's just a different ball game entirely. Yeah,
but I think even there were stages in the game where Galway got involved in stuff. Like, their discipline was terrible. Like they kind of, you have to say they pretty cracked really. That when the heat came on, said we're back to type. Like we'd say Conor Whelan, I suppose, the prime example. Like he had a goal chance in the 44th minute. Conor would probably feel he should have done better. Well saved by Owen Murphy. That was his last shot in the game. Now, okay, a lot of the ball that went in after that was, was just poor stuff. Like, it was Hail Mary stuff that was going in on top of him. Kilkenny scrambling back. Like, even some of the balls, like from Hugh Lawler's perspective, like, even if there were 60-40 balls, like, they were kind of heading for the corner. Like, all Lawler had to do really was get his feet, get his position right, and just, make sure Wheeler wasn't really in a place to win, or wasn't in a anywhere near the goal for it to be a threat if he got the ball. So, like, I suppose malfunction in a lot of regards. He said no real grip around the middle. Kilkenny kind of definitely got on top in the aerial battle, and it really was kind of a TJ Reid, free taking masterclass. 12 points from 13 shots, and I suppose the one of the shot that wasn't a score was maybe it was a Hawkeye decision that said Hawkeye data unavailable. So, and like, Conor Cooney's conversion rate from place ball is 64%. Conor, look at a couple of frees let on the last quarter that he missed it. He'd expect to nail and he sleep nearly. So, just so much stuff went wrong. And I think a lot of the frees as well from Galway perspective, like, you'd have to question some of their tackling. Poor stuff. I think Galway have some poor tacklers in their team. Repeatedly punished. And like, just basic stuff that you'd expect better from Galway. But this is the inconsistency, Cian, we've spoken about. And the other thing as well is, maybe we mentioned here last week that, maybe we read too much into the fact that, okay, Kilkenny, Galway now, they're unbeaten. They go up to Croke Park. If they're really, really serious contenders, they have to beat Kilkenny. But let's be honest about it, it just doesn't happen. Galway don't handle Kilkenny well in Croke Park at all. Like, since they went into Leinster in 2009, like since 2010, they've played Kilkenny 10 times in Croke Park and have won once the 2012 Leinster Final. So, okay, like they beat Kilkenny in the Leinster Final replay in Thurles in 2018, but just, you know, they just seem to have a hang up with Kilkenny, and Kilkenny have this thing with Galway, like that they just deep down, I don't think they rate them, that they don't want Galway and Leinster. Like Cody's made that, you know, he's openly stated that, and not openly stated, but he said in the Dublin dressing room in 2013 after, you know, Kilkenny were beaten by Dublin, that he said that, look, we let Bob O'Keefe out of the province last year, something that they weren't very proud of, and that he more or less said to Dublin, you kind of have to keep that trophy in Leinster. You know, as Daly said after, he said Cody effectively gave him he effectively gave the speech before the Leinster Final, because he didn't have to say a whole lot after that. So there's that whole thing as well, and just Galway haven't handled it well, Cian. And Saturday was another example of just, you know, like you could list off so many examples. Go back to the 2020 Leinster Final when Galway seemed to be in control of that game. Okay, 2 goals did turn it, but, you know, Kilkenny didn't need goals on Saturday. Like, you know, to beat Kilkenny, you need goals. Galway had the chances. You could say they had 7 chances in total. You could say 3 of them were good goal chances. Some of them were half chances, but, you know, you don't take your chance against Kilkenny. You leave Kilkenny hanging in any game, especially up in Croke Park, you're going to pay a price, and Galway paid a big price.
Galway just couldn't get any real fluidity into their play. As you mentioned, Conor Whelan was very effective, carried the fight, and was Galway's most potent attacker. But even in the closing stages, Galway couldn't get him into the game, which I suppose illustrates the fact that they just never really got going as a team.
No, and turned over the ball 34 times, Cian, you know, conceded 12 points off that possession, which, you know, is effectively more than half Kilkenny scores. You know, you look at, you know, where were Kilkenny getting their scores? We're getting them from TJ Freeze, and like even from TJ's perspective, right? Like, no question, up there with one of the greatest players of all time. But like TJ, he 3 possessions in the first quarter. Then I think he went over nearly the guts of half an hour of touching the ball. You know, he was involved in a half goal chance in the middle of the second half. Then, like when Galway got it back to 2 points with 10 minutes to play, you know, he caught a puck out, fouled for a free, slotted the free. You know, so like at that stage, Galway were building momentum, seemed to have some bit of a foothold in the game. They got a couple of scores. You know, TJ came up with you could arguably say nearly the biggest play of the match, considering the time and the, you know, I suppose the importance of that score. So, like, he didn't need to be brilliant. You know, he was effective in what little possession he had. And, you know, like Kilkenny, they just dogged it out. They just literally, you know, relentless intensity, you know, stuff that, you know, nothing surprising there from a Kilkenny's perspective. 21 points, 22 points to win the game, you could say comfortably. So, you know, like you score 17 points for a team like Galway in Croke Park, just like, you know, I'd say Henry must be, you know, disgusted with the performance, disgusted with, like, especially for him, given what was at stake. Now, the other side of all this was Kilkenny would have felt that with Henry on the other side, all the other side shows, you know, that they felt it was a game they couldn't lose. But the other thing is maybe that whole sideshow as well is maybe, I won't say sidetracking the thing, but maybe it's disguising that, you know, Galway, you know, that performance is not good enough and not acceptable. So they'll be asking themselves hard questions as well, Cian.
Very difficult, Christy. If you lose in the round robin, I think you can get the momentum back, or you can get on a run, or even if you come third in your province, a la Cork, who are now looking at a Premier League quarter final, a tricky one, it must be said, away to the Joe McDonagh Cup champions Antrim at the weekend. But for Galway, they're going to be out the weekend after in an All-Ireland quarter final against a team likely to be Cork, even though you have to say that Antrim will provide a stern test, and Darren Gleeson's doing a brilliant job with Antrim. So it's whatever happens and whoever Galway play, it's a difficult scenario.
But funnily enough, Cian, I actually don't think it's that difficult. I think like the Clare now could be like Galway, or you could say, are in a much more advantageous position now than Clare. Like if you're to break it down and just look at this coldly for a minute, right? So like they're going into the game now, we assume it's going to be Cork, okay? So like they didn't expend a whole lot of energy Saturday night, right? So that, you know, it's not like when you look at what Clare expended on Sunday, like physically, mentally, you know, like the intensity of that game, you know, like, and that's the big worry, I suppose, from a Clare perspective. Like Clare now, if you let's say, okay, and it's no disrespect to Antrim or Kerry, but we'll assume that Wexford and Cork are going to win. So Clare are more than capable of beating Wexford. They're more than if they win that, they're more than capable of beating Kilkenny. But you know, it's two more big games now where they have to go to the well again. You know, they have to especially after Sunday, which, you know, like it's just incredible stuff, like incredible, you know, what that would have taken out of them. So Clare will be expected to win that game, probably expected to win it with a bit to spare, right? And, you know, there is pressure in that regard. Galway now are going in, let's say, against Cork, you know, assuming Cork are going to win. No real expectation. Probably the Galway public writing them off again, probably frustrated with them again. And like Galway, I'd say they could have trained early Sunday morning, you know, whereas Clare might be able to train until Thursday or Friday, given what they put into that game. So, you know, like Galway now know, right, that okay, that they're out, they have to be stung, they have to be, you know, not happy with that performance. You know, obviously see what went wrong, try and address it. And they know as well, like that maybe at times where, you know, Galway are caught in that middle ground on Saturday of wanting it to be a dogfight and, you know, making it into a dogfight, you know, instead of, you know, trying to maybe open it up a little bit more. Now the next day they try and do that against Cork, there'll only be one winner. Whereas now the next day, maybe that's the game you needed to be a dogfight, where you drag Cork into the trenches, because for all, you know, for as good as Cork have looked against Waterford and Tipperary, you'd have to say that you can't really judge Cork on those performances, because Tipper and Waterford were so poor. Like, you know, if you even look at the Tipperary game again, like the time that Cork got on the ball that day, like they wouldn't even try that stuff, Cian, against a Limerick or a Clare, because they know they wouldn't get away with it. So you can't really judge Cork until they can deal with that level of intensity and that level of aggression and physicality. So if Galway are going to bring that, you know, they're more than capable of beating Cork. But I think that's what Galway have to do now in the next, you know, 10, 11 days, is trying to prepare for that kind of a battle. Because there is no real pressure on them now, because they're effectively written off, I'm sure, by the Galway public. We all know how critical the Galway public can be of the hurling team. So in one way, they're not in a bad position. Like, where you're going to compare that into Clare, like at this stage now, Clare look like the second best team in the country, no question about it. And the people are saying, well, yeah, it's going to be a Limerick-Clare All-Ireland final rematch. A lot of hurling to be played before then, Cian. So, yeah, I think that, you know, if Galway can get their heads right, you know, get a few things right in the training ground, go with the right attitude, there's no reason they can't get to semi-final. And if they do get to semi-final against Limerick, you know, why can't they have a cut off them? Like, they're the one team that has the physical profile like Clare to match up to them if they use it properly.
Speaking of Sunday's game, Christy, a Munster final for the ages.
Stop, Cian. Look at, let's be honest about it. It's actually physicality on a level unlike anything we've ever seen before in hurling. I know we've seen a lot of stuff from Kilkenny over the years. You know, you've seen unbelievable battles, you know, but like that stuff on Sunday, like it's just like the aggression, the physicality, the manliness, the like power, like the, you know, it's just like, it's crash test stuff. Like, it's to be able to survive in that heat, and, you know, to be able to, like, even if you look at some of the individual possession counts, like some guys, you know, seem to be on the ball or seem to be in the action, maybe 3-4 possessions in the match, just couldn't get your hands on the ball. So look, at that point, Tony Kelly is the player he is. Like, you know, no matter how much, you know, no matter how much heat is on in the game, no matter how much ferocity, intensity, he can still drift into those pockets, in those half spaces where it's the only place you really hurt Limerick. And Kelly's the one player who's able to find those pockets. get into those half spaces, and he's so good and so accurate, you know, when he gets it. Like, but yeah, like it's just like it's like you know, off the chart stuff. Like, and even the atmosphere, the you know, the whole day, like the whole vibe around it. It was kind of a pity in a way that the weather was as bad as it was, but you know, you could argue like the better players actually come out in the rain. Like that's where you really see the real skill. It's more intense. It's more claustrophobic. There's I said it here before. Rick found out after the game and that I'm like, you know, that they can't bully, and that was all over the place again on Sunday. Where like Clare, just like so many occasions, Cian, where you'd see Clare guys hit from all angles, like wrapped up in the tackle, and still able to break free, still able to you know, to get away and extricate themselves from that savagery and just get the ball away. Like, and you know, look at as well as that 129 to 29 points and all went to extra time. Like, but you know, just unbelievable stuff. And from a Clare perspective, like very disappointing again not to have won another, you know, beaten another Munster final, but very proud of the lads. Like, you know, heroic stuff. And look at if they can replicate that stuff going forward. There's no reason why they can't get another crack at Limerick again. That's assuming Limerick to get to the final. They'll have to deal with that 4-week layoff now. But I think from Limerick's perspective, the break is coming just at the right time for them, because there definitely are signs, Cian, that they are creaking a little bit, which is understandable, you know, considering that they've been on the road for so long. They're unbeaten for 3 years. They're beaten in Munster for 4 years. Hard to keep, you know, producing that level of quality at that intensity. So yeah, they're getting a 4-week break now, and I'd say very, very glad of it.
Finally, Christy, Limerick, a decorated team over the past number of years since beating Galway, especially in that All-Ireland final 2018, and since then they've added Munster and All-Ireland glory to I suppose to the cabinet. But on Sunday it seemed that this particular Munster win, that it really meant something considering the ferocity of the Clare challenge. It really, of all their wins, this surely ranks high up there.
Oh, no question, Cian. And look, obviously the Clare-Limerick rivalry is very intense, but if you go back to, we'll say that I suppose look at the three, they've won 4 now, right? It's like, you know, they destroyed Tip in the 19 final. The 20 final was a fair tough game. It was a very, very intense match, like, but it was played in an empty Semple Stadium. Like last year was a great occasion in lots of ways. I don't know what was it. Like, I can't remember how many fans were, 5,000 maybe. You know, but it was effectively a game at 2 halves, whereby, you know, Tip were dominant in the first half. Like, but even in the second half, team, like Limerick had control of that match within 15 minutes. Like, it was only going to be one winner. Like, you could say even 10 minutes into the second half, when Limerick had turned the tide, like it was really a procession then from like there until the final whistle. So, you know, they knew like 50 minutes to go last year, the game was over, similar to the 19 final. So like like last day, like it was, you know, it was, Limerick couldn't take their eye off the ball or their foot off the gas for a second, because Clare were right there with them. Like, so yeah, like and even with the All-Ireland last year, like they won that All-Ireland pulling up. Like they won the All-Ireland pulling up in 2020, beaten in the semi-final in by Kilkenny in 19. So, you know, like go back to 18, like they absolutely dominated the second half of that game as well. So, you know, the Kilkenny game in 19 was not a good Limerick performance in so many ways. Like they were blown out in the first 20 minutes. So you could say really, Cian, that's the first time in probably since they won the All-Ireland where, okay, the Cork game in 19, but since they become All-Ireland champions, it's the first time that a team has really, really gone like blow for blow them in a knockout game. Not a knockout game, you know, a game with so much on the line, where literally they were absolutely matched stride for stride. So yeah, like they're a super team, super champions. And I suppose look at it, just, you know, Clare probably ran out of gas a bit in extra time. Limerick have that big game experience. They've been there so often. They were able to draw on all of that. Like, but they absolutely needed every bit of it. And just, I suppose, copper fastened why they are the team they are, because to be able to to survive that onslaught. And like even in the first half, you could say that Clare sides were level at half time and Clare had goal chances. Not so much goal chances, but they had a lot of chances. Limerick had a lot of wides in fairness in the second half and an extra time. But yeah, like look at it was like two heavyweights going at it, like, and just Clare just counted out eventually by the clock and by us just running out of gas.
Thanks a million, Christy. We look forward to next week's chat, previewing the All-Ireland quarter-finals on Saturday or Sunday week.